And I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us this afternoon for strategies on how business can persevere and recover from COVID-19. With us today are Canadian Western Bank's Executive Vice President of Banking, Stephen Murphy, who's joining us from Vancouver, and Executive Vice President of Human Resources and Communications, Kelly Blackett, who is in Edmonton. And with them this afternoon is their client, Doug Engdahl, who is the Chief Executive Officer and Principal Geologist of the Axiom Group in Saskatoon. So our objective this afternoon is to leave everyone with some perspectives on how putting people first can help your organization succeed through a crisis and every day. We're going to start with Stephen and Kelly, who are going to tell us a bit about CWB Financial and how it is putting people first during the COVID-19 crisis. Doug is going to tell us about his business and his experience as a CWB client. Before we start, however, I would like to thank the partners that have made this webinar possible. Of course, our presenters, CWB Financial Group, Canada Life, Grant Thornton, Export Development Canada, TELUS, RBC, Desjardins, Deloitte, Air Canada, Facebook, Salesforce Canada, TD Bank, Rogers Communications, Cisco, Sun Life, Morneau Chappelle, Sustential Inc., Johnson Inc., Sherardkas, and Global Public Affairs. During the webinar, please send questions you have for Kelly or Stephen or Doug using the Slido app link that was sent with your confirmation earlier today. And now let's get started. So Stephen, I'll turn to you. For those who aren't familiar with CWB, can you give us a quick overview of who you are and what CWB offers?
Sure. Thanks, Susanna. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So Canadian Western Bank is a chartered bank, and we're focused on business owners. That's our main priority and target client, our business owners. And so we through that focus, we try to provide a proactive, personalized kind of service around business owners with specialized expertise kind of built around that business owner offering around personal wealth as well as their commercial banking needs. And so we're headquartered in Edmonton with about $30 billion in loans across the country. About a quarter of that's in Ontario, though. But we don't actually have any traditional banking operations in Ontario yet. And actually our plans are this year, delayed a little bit because of COVID-19, but we're opening our first banking center in Mississauga. Actually, that'll be our first traditional banking operation in Ontario. But as I said, we've got about a quarter of our book in Eastern Canada, in Ontario, but we have operations in all the provinces. So that's a bit of our kind of geographic expansion strategy as we're going across the country.
Thanks, Stephen. And just to be clear, you're focused on the business market. Can you give us a sense of, are you more focused on the small and medium business market or larger business, or is your customer base a mix of both?
Yeah, it's a mix, but I would tell you that historically we've been focused on the mid-market commercial client, but we are increasingly, through the advancement of our digital strategy, reaching out to the small business market. So probably in the beginning of next year, we are going to be launching a total new online banking package, and I think something really innovative and interesting for all business owners, and that'll give us the ability to scale that business and bring something unique
Sorry, could I ask whoever is not on, who has their mic still on, to put it on mute? Okay, we're getting someone else's conversation. Could you please put your mic on mute? Thank you very much. Doug, I think we lost the last couple of sentences from what you were. Yeah, could you just take us to circle back until we?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So historically we've been focused on kind of the mid-market commercial client, and that was just a function of focus and using our with the level of service and personalization that we have. We call it a boutique for business owners that we've built. But to really scale on the small business side, we really needed, digital capabilities that would allow a lot of self-service interaction with still a lot of personalization to it. But we couldn't do that through the physical network that we had. And so we've been on a digital transformation journey for a while. And so, at the beginning of next year, we expect to be able to launch all that, have something, a really unique offering for the small business segment so that we can more be for all business owners, not just kind of a segment of business owners. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, very, very timely, I would say. Can you just give us an ETA on your Mississauga office, your Mississauga branch? Do you have any idea when it might be open?
Well, the workers were able to get back in actually last week to finish the leasehold. So, we're thinking that we might soft open that towards the end of the summer and just get the people in and complete their training and get initial activities. I don't think we're going to do, a formal opening until the fall. And it really is dependent on how things open up in the economy and what the distancing situation looks like there. So we just want to make sure that we're doing things appropriately for our own people and for what our clients are ready for that we launch at the right time and that it's appropriate for the circumstances.
Perfect. Thanks. But before the end of the year,
Oh, for sure before the end of the year. Yeah.
Okay. Doug, I'm going to turn to you now. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the Axiom Group.
Well, hi, Susanna and Stephen and Kelly. Thanks for having me here. It's flattering that you guys would want to hear my opinion. My name is Doug. I'm the CEO of Axiom Exploration Group. We're an employee-owned and operated Saskatchewan-based geological, geophysical, and environmental consulting and service company. We're active internationally, but the majority of our work lies within Canada and the US, but have done work in Africa, South America, and Europe. And over the last 2 years, we've grown to over 40 contractors and are developing some exciting new first-to-market drone-based technology that's going to be applied to the geophysical industry.
Also very timely, I would say, from everything that's going on. Doug, as a business owner, what was it about CWB, I apologize, that led you to choose them as your financial partner?
Well, originally, so we're just 2.5, almost 3 years old. And originally, we never started banking with CWB. We quickly realized that we weren't receiving the support we needed to achieve our targets, and we're a fast-growing company. So a few of our trusted clients we leaned on and asked their opinions, and they recommended CWB. And we followed up, and we're pretty thankful we did, because within a couple of weeks, we were converted over, had everything we needed, and CWB came to us on our schedule in our office, and they made the process totally painless and easy to understand. It's quite pleasurable dealing with them right off the bat.
Great. So when we first saw the CWB, the COVID-19 threat coming towards Canada earlier this year, those of us in the business community and those of us who speak for the business community were pretty sure it was going to hit the small and medium business sector the hardest. And we now have Statistics Canada data. The Canadian Chamber and Statistics Canada cooperated on a survey that actually was done in April. The results came out earlier this month. And we know that we know for sure that they've been hit very, very hard. Mm-hmm. And through this process, we also know that financial institutions have had to be extremely responsive throughout the crisis. And it's been from deferring loan and mortgage repayments, being the facilitators and deliverers of some of the government's support programs. They've been operating with reduced branch presences, and the list goes on. One of the things that we've been hearing most throughout the crisis is how important taking care of your people has been in a business. And I'd like to turn to you, Kelly. Can you tell us what leadership looks like right now, and how you're caring for your own people at CWB Financial?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Susanna. And thank you so much for having me here. I'm always pleased, this is an exciting moment for HR people across Canada, because it is an opportunity where we really get to be strategic business partners and help leaders through what's some of the most challenging circumstances they've ever seen. And I will just say, I'm super impressed with anyone who's on here as a small business owner. I'm really impressed with the hustle and the resilience that you guys are demonstrating through this. I see it every day in sort of the businesses I interact with personally and professionally, and know how hard it is. For us, we're about a 2,500 person organization, so potentially bigger than some of the companies that you lead. But I think a lot of the lessons we've learned are applicable. We realized early on that this was going to be a real challenge for us from an employee standpoint. So we set up a very small group. And I would say one of the first lessons we learned is the most important thing is to have really good decision-making protocols. And so what we did was we had a response team. It's filled with about 13 people from across the business, cross-functionally. We met, and we still are meeting almost every day. That team sort of then works hard. We pulled a number of them out of their core full-time positions so that they could work on our COVID response. And then what they did was they escalated decision-making to a smaller team that we set up at the executive level. Myself, Stephen, our Chief Information Security Officer, our operations leader, and our CEO. And again, what we did was we were basically turning decisions within under 24 hours about how we would handle the workplace questions that were coming up in the crisis. And we're continuing to try and do that as we think through what we're calling the return to the workplace. We're quite careful to not call it return to work, because our folks have been working virtually very hard throughout this whole period. The second thing we did was, as we made those decisions, we really used our values and our principles. We've done quite a bit of good work over the course of the past couple of years around our brand and our values. And I think sometimes when you do that work, it feels a bit, I call it squishy, squishy HR work. But, I'll tell you, it has really paid off for us, because it's created a set of behaviors and expectations about our teams, within our teams. And we've been able to rely on that as we've made decisions. So for us, our primary value is actually people first. That's what we call it. And we basically told people that as we would make decisions, that our first priority would be protecting the physical and psychological health and safety of our employees, as well as our clients. And so, sort of once we had that principle and value in place, really the decisions became actually pretty easy. And it also allowed us that even if we didn't have an answer for something, like, for example, what return to the workplace would look like, we could tell people how we would make that decision, and that we would put their safety first. And so we really have found that to be a grounding. So for us, that's been a lesson. Some of the things we did over a 3-day period, we pivoted 85% of our workforce to working from home. So that required an investment in technology, and we were pretty quick to make those decisions. We gave folks an extra 10 days off for childcare and elder care, paid days off, to help with school closures. We also provided comprehensive time off for any illnesses, no questions asked, no doctor's notes required. We knew that one of the things we had to do was keep that workplace safe, and the best way that we could do it was give continuity for people, that if they had any type of symptoms, that they felt confident that they could stay at home and continue to receive pay. It also meant for us, we actually came out with a commitment to our folks that we would not do any layoffs as a result of COVID. And that was, I would say, a very settling and empowering message for our workforce. The second value that we really leaned into was our value that we call relationship gets results. And that's all about how we work with our clients. Susanna, you talked about the fact that banks have remained open. We think that's a privilege, that we're an essential service during that time. But we did have to keep a lot of our branches open. And I would say, that was really important to us because our clients lean on us, and this is a really tough time for them, and they need us more than ever. At the same time, what we had to do was, we have folks who are really scared to come into the workplace, that continue to go to branches. And so, we just really took a lot of steps to make sure that those workplaces were safe. Everyone that didn't need to be there, we got them set up working from home. We put in place really strong physical distancing measures, plexiglass seals. We worked super hard to get PPE in place, and we're really creative about where we found some of that. Lots of enhanced cleaning protocols. We went so far as to figure out people that were taking public transit and weren't comfortable getting public transit, how we would get them to work in other places. So we really took a very individualized approach and really looked at it as every single person, what was their unique challenge and how could we help them solve for their challenge? So that was one of the things that we did to kind of keep people coming into work. I would say, during all of this, the one thing that we found is the most important thing to do is just keep talking with your people. You need to communicate, and you need to do it more than you possibly feel is necessary. And you need to do it with a level of consistency and candor that, people don't want to hear corporate speak right now, right? They want to hear the real deal. And you kind of need to do it even when you don't have anything to say. So one of the things we did was we set up an everyday routine of talking to people, and then we set up different ways for them to get information directly from executives. So Stephen spent time with branch employees on skip level calls. We did executive blogs. We did videos from our home. We also set up an anonymous Ask the Response Team channel. That's been hugely valuable because then we're hearing directly from employees the unfiltered questions and concerns and things that are on their mind. And then we have a chance to kind of proactively address them. The other thing that we decided early on from a communication standpoint was we wanted to try and be the source of truth for folks. And so, there's so much clutter out there. There's so many news information sources, so many social media channels, and a lot of them have not great information on them. And so we really tried to focus people and say, we will spend time, watching the health authority things and giving you good information so that you can make good decisions for both for work, but also for your family. So we've really tried to provide good resources for people to think about how they cope through this from a family standpoint. So again, lots of new communication channels. One of the other things we did that was totally free, we've never used social media before for our employees. We set up a closed Facebook group. We have about 400 people on that closed Facebook group. It's sort of lightly moderated. It's been totally professional, but we've got people setting up peer networks for one another and sharing homeschooling resources and sharing funny memes. And it's been a wonderful way for people to connect across the organization that hasn't been so leader-led. And that's, really given people a sense of a little bit of sort of purpose and control as they've worked through it. And then the last thing I'd say is just the mental health challenges. You can't underestimate them. People are working from home. You don't know what their home circumstances might be. Many of them are parents who are trying to homeschool alongside continuing to work. And so I would say one of the things we did that really worked was, we just had our leaders talk in a very authentic way about what they were going through and be vulnerable. And really sort of get that message out of it's okay if you're not okay. And again, we built up those peer networks. I would recommend anyone, make sure that as you think about, even moving forward, if you haven't done it already, think about what your mental health and wellness strategy can be for your organization. There are incredible free resources available through the Canadian Mental Health Foundation that an employer of any size can use. And And I know that may, again, sound kind of squishy or touchy-feely, but I would tell you, I think that investing in good support for mental health is probably one of the best business decisions we've made. There's no doubt in my mind, as we've gone through this, we had a blip of absenteeism for about 2 weeks as people scrambled to get kind of homeschooling set up, and also as we dealt with isolation requirements for people coming back from travel. But we are back to essentially lower absenteeism than we ever had pre-crisis. And I would say our productivity of our folks is for sure on par, and sometimes in some cases even better than it was pre-crisis. And I think a big part of that is just about how we've managed through this from an employee standpoint. So, at the end of the day, there's so much you can't control through a situation like this. But what you can control is you can control how you treat your employees, and you can control how you treat your clients. And for us, those two things are connected in a virtuous circle. In other words, the better we take care of our people, it means the better they're going to take care of our clients. And we think those are the two single most important things that will help us ride this out and position us for being in a great place as we come out of the crisis.
Well, that's great. Thanks. And then maybe you've already answered this question, Kelly, but if you had, one piece of advice to give to the business leaders on this webinar, what would that piece of advice be?
Don't waste a good crisis. This is an actual incredible opportunity for an organization to build their leadership brand, the loyalty of their employees. It's okay if you don't have all the answers. And probably what your teams want from you is kind of a mix of optimism, how you'll get through it together, honesty and vulnerability, and most importantly, showing them that you care for them as individuals, and finding ways that you can treat them as individuals through this. So I just think that this is intentional, real connections are the things that will help carry the day through something like this.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We've had, in the early stages of the pandemic here at the Canadian Chamber, our CEO, Perrin Beatty, was sending us articles from various media sources on how to, clean high-touch areas in your house and that kind of thing. So it's very important. Doug, I'm going to turn to you now again. What have you learned about the value of partnership and community through this crisis? And I'll tack on a second question. And how do you feel that they have benefited your businesses, your own business, and your clients?
Okay, well, I learned a lot just in the last 10 minutes listening to Kelly, but I'll tell you what I learned before that. So like our approach with our clients and our engagement in the local communities that we operate in, we are an essential service. But we don't take advantage of that because, like I said, we take care of our staff, our people first, and then in turn take care of the communities that we're working in. A lot of them are isolated and have limited medical facilities, and so when something like this does come into their communities, it's more serious than say in a larger center. Yeah. So the numbers are the affected numbers are can be great and spread rapidly. So like we have always been very personal, and our relationships have allowed us to to share information we've compiled from industry with respect to protocols, health facts, and documents that they can redistribute. And so it's helped our clients with much of the confusing information that's been circulated via social media, the news, fake news, if you want to call it, and has allowed us and them to make informed decisions on the path forward, and not just assuming because we're an essential service we're allowed into these areas. We still need the social license to operate in those areas, and still need to make sure that we're taking all precautions. So basically, in what Kelly said is communication, even when you have nothing to say, is important. Just keeping that line of communication open, and that's how we've, the partnership and community, that what we've seen and has benefited our business, right? So just basically further entrenching our relationships that we already have established with our clients.
And what would you say the biggest challenge has been to your firm in the crisis?
Well, I guess the biggest challenge, other than like the operating protocols we had to develop and put into place, right, while information was flooding in, that's an obvious one, to protect our staff and the communities. But we also had to take a good look at our interrupted cash flows, and that's not the squishy part of it. It's a reality,
hard
right?
Reality,
Because we're not protecting our people if months from now they don't have a job, right? So our staff, so that's important. And we went after we did some analysis. We were presented with a potential few months that we're gonna need some stress relief, some support. At least have it in place if we needed it. I didn't even have to inquire about the options that were available to us. Our who we deal with at the CWB, Tara Wright and Lisa Sebastian Larson, they were informing me before these options were even available. And then within a couple of days of them becoming available to small medium business, they took care of it with zero effort on our part, allowing us to focus on our operations and our clients that didn't even have to put more than 10 minutes of thought into it. They kind of did that for us, which is I found very valuable. While everything else is going on, they kind of took care of that, and that's their expertise.
Well, that's great to hear, and it's a nice segue into my question of Stephen. So we've heard a little bit from Doug about some of the special treatment that your staff has been giving clients in the crisis. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the other things that CWB is doing differently during the crisis to help your clients out?
Yeah, so I mean, right at the outset in mid-March, we could see what was happening and that we were headed toward an unprecedented economic shutdown. And so, when you aspire to kind of be the best for someone, like we aspire to be the best for business owners. And so what's that look like? What is it? And the word that we have used in the last couple of years to encapsulate where we think we can really make a difference is around proactive. And we said, listen, everything's going to shut down for I don't know how long. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we're going to see something we've never seen before, where the whole economy just closes for a while. And so he said, so what do we need to do? What do we need to get on right now? And so amongst other things, the main thing was around, okay, they need breathing room. So, so this concept that eventually got quite broad, and the government got in on things as well around just deferring payments, just hit the pause button and give breathing room. So that was the main element, saying, okay, who needs it? How do we bridge clients to the other side when there's more information and things, and we get out of this shutdown period? And so and the proactive part of it was connect with the clients, talk to them, figure out what they need, figure out how to make this happen, get on it. And so this was before any government programs, before what we knew what anybody else was going to do. We started calling clients. We actually didn't have operational processes figured out quite yet to actually execute it. But we said that doesn't have to hold us up from talking to the clients, because we know what we need to do. So we actually mobilized our teams to talk to all our clients, get out there, talk to them, figure out where everyone's at and what they think they're going to need, because there was a range of need and we were trying to prioritize. And then within a few days, by the time we'd figure out how to streamline our processes to actually be able to scale and execute really quickly, we'd actually knew what we needed to do for who. And so we already had talked to the clients, we were ready to go, and we started hitting it. And I remember there was a CEO of one of our clients on social media said, they phoned me, we talked about it, within 24 hours, everything was done. And that was the key, is that it was reaching out, talking the clients through it, making them feel comfortable, and that they understood that they could get an individualized solution. And then it's all about execution. So you can talk about it, you can, put it on your website and say you're doing stuff, but if you're not getting her done, you're not making any difference. And so I think that was the big difference, was reaching out, walking people through it, and then actually getting it done. And it helped when you think about a crisis in our teams. Our teams at that point were like, the world is ending. And you're trying to mobilize them like, I need you focused because we got a job to do here and I need you to take care of our clients. And so it actually was kind of helpful of, week one, call clients, figure out how we hit the pause button for them to get them through the other side. And people were focused on, I know what I need to do. I know the conversation I need to have. And then when we did all of, so we ended up deferring or making payment arrangements for probably, by volume of dollars, so probably a proxy for the number of clients, about 20% of our clients. So that's a lot of phone calls and video calls. But once we processed that, that's when the government started to mobilize around the Canada Emergency Business Account, the CEBA, and EDC and BDC were starting to stand up sponsored lending programs. And so we actually kind of went in waves. So as CEBA came out, it was like we figured out, we ran the data of who are the eligible clients, and we reached out to those clients saying, hey, we think you're eligible for this. Do you know about it? Do you know what to do? We've stood up a process. We can do this for you. And we did it. And that was and then we had the wave of, we stood up the EDC process. They were the first that we worked out the documentation with and the operational process. We, again, triaged our portfolio of clients, reached out, made sure even before we were able to execute it, we were talking about what we thought the parameters were going to be, or what we thought we could do. There was a now client who, was a prospect before COVID, and one of our teams phoned them, and they'd actually been trying to talk to their financial institution for 2 weeks, and they couldn't get a hold of their people. And so they're in the dark. And so we walked them through everything of what it looked like and everything. They said, that's so helpful. Like, I can't believe you phoned me. Like, I'm not even your client. And so, that was kind of living that, like, you have a value and then you get the opportunity to live it. And it's like, there was a little bit of a rallying cry and a little bit of pride in the team, because we said, this is our time. Like, we talked about a bunch of stuff, but if you've ever had the opportunity to live it, it's now. So let's stand up and make this happen. And so, I think, but keeping them focused that in these kind of waves of, what do I need you to focus on this week? Get this done, make this difference this week. That kind of week to week kind of primary focus, I think really helped us in execution.
Well, that's certainly, and I'd like to come back to you a bit about your ability to be so agile throughout this, but I would like to turn back to Doug. And just talk a little bit more about your relationship with CWB, which is obviously excellent. And I wonder what if other when other business owners are thinking about their relationships with their financial institutions, and they're going through their experience with them through the COVID-19 crisis. What do you think makes a good financial partner, not only when times are bad like they are now, but when times are I don't know if they ever will be, but quote unquote normal?
You're right. We do have a great relationship with CWB. And I had a couple people ask me, are you prepared for this webinar? And I said, yeah, there was no preparation for this webinar, because it's really easy to talk about something that you believe in. And like Stephen hit the nail on the head a few times with that, and being proactive and getting in front of their clients. When I get a personalized email from my banker, and it's talking about things that like aren't even really like known yet, just like he said, just get in front of them, start that line of communication. It's exactly what they did. So what they're saying, they're not just preaching it, they practice it. So like, and with the staff like we have, like that I deal with Tara Wright and Lori Sebastian Larson, the communication level was top shelf. So then you say, what does a good financial partner look like? This is the one I'm happy to answer. because it should look like a bank that doesn't make you feel like they're doing you a favor. They should make you feel comfortable, informed. They should understand your business operations well enough to draw on their own expertise and offer like real solutions, not just generic, blanketed solutions that like real solutions that actually help us get to where we want to be and succeed. So this is how CWB conducted themselves with Axiom from day one, and it hasn't changed even in the tough times like we're all experiencing today. And it's the tough times that come about. Doesn't matter what industry it is, whether you're mining, whether you're an educator, whether you're a financial institution, your true character and colors show when times are tough. And they haven't wavered at all from day one till now. So that's what a good financial partner looks like in my eyes.
Well, that's great, Doug. Thanks very much.
Gift basket is on the way, Doug.
Pardon me?
Gift basket is on the way.
So we just have a final question for you, Stephen, but before we turn to it, I would like to invite everybody to use the Slido app for any questions you have for Stephen, Doug, or Kelly. Otherwise, they're going to have to answer my questions, and I don't know how they're going to like that. But so a final question to you, Stephen. And I think in the last couple of weeks, we've all noted that that while we're still in the midst of this crisis, everyone is starting to look ahead to post-COVID-19 life, both personally and in our business lives. And what do you see post-COVID-19 looking like for relationships between clients and financial institutions? Yeah. And do you think we could see a change there?
Yeah, that's a great question, Susanna. I think the legacy of distancing is going to last a long time. And so, do we ever get back to what we would have called normal? I think we're permanently changed to some degree, and it will get more normal-ish over time, but we are in a protracted period of just forget government guidance. It's people are going to behave differently and feel different levels of comfort around interactions than they did before. And for our organization, it's quite a challenge for us because we always kind of talked about the core of our strategy was being more personal and more individual than the competition. That's how we tried to differentiate. So we were more face-to-face, knock on the door, out hustle, out relationship, but it was all quite dependent on in-person connections and relationships. And so we were already kind of reimagining what that would look like in a more digital environment as we expanded into the small business space. But this has completely accelerated that, saying, wow, this is actually attacking the core of what we thought our main differentiator was the way we thought about the basis of a relationship. Well, now you got to think about it in a more virtual kind of environment, both in the enablement of that relationship in like video conferencing and things like that, or digital onboarding of clients rather than a bunch of physical documents and things like that. But for us, it's about we need to totally rethink what it looks like to interact with clients and prospects, because it changes our game a little bit on how we thought about what our secret sauce was. And I think many businesses are going to be in that space of the way business is done is going to be different, I think. And I think that will be a lasting feeling. And so for us, it just has accelerated and reinforced how critical our digital transformation is, both to enabling those experiences, but also giving access and scalability to more potential relationships and growth. So that's kind of the way that I just think high quality client relationships and staying in touch and nurturing those relationships, it's going to be a bit different. And it will be very technology enabled, I think.
Well, let's hope that's the case. There's a lot of places in this country where digital access is still a huge issue, but I think you're absolutely right. I know from my own personal experience into week 11 of working remotely that Yeah, it's a whole different business world for sure, for a lot of us, not for everybody, because you still need people
Right.
in places making things, but I think you're absolutely correct. So
Right.
we now have some
Susanna,
questions.
I would just ask you, like, when we do go digital, we will not lose the essence of personal and individual.
And that's
And
critical.
the thing is, I've said, over my dead body, will anyone ever phone our bank and get a voice response system going, press 1 if like our options have changed. Please listen for the next 7 minutes while I describe them. Like, that will never ever happen, because I just think it's at the anthem of what we're trying to stand for from a personal experience is, and so there's little bits of things that's the trick for us is, how do you translate personal and individualized into a digitally enabled environment?
That's right, exactly. So we do have a couple of questions. So now we'll go over to Slido, and I think Kelly, this one would be for you. How do you measure productivity? How have you noticed trends? And I think you said your productivity was doing very well. And have you noticed trends throughout the crisis as employees go through different stages of dealing with the realities of the COVID-19 crisis?
That is a great question. And we actually talk about this a lot as an executive team. Some jobs are easy to measure, right? Some jobs are flow jobs where they're doing transactions and you can sort of sense. I would say in those jobs, we've been able to see that people have either maintained their level of transaction processing or increased it. But in a huge number of our jobs, we've basically had to throw our performance measures out the window. Because it was actually becoming it was creating a source of anxiety for our folks, right? They were like, but this is what I measured on. I measured on growth. If you think about a commercial account manager or something like that. And so I think it gets back to what Stephen was talking about, which is you have to work within a framework of, we sort of said to our folks, listen, we're going to be fair. We're going to be fair, and we understand everything's changed. And so, here's what we think you can do this week, or here's what we think you can do this month that we think is going to make the difference. So we've moved to being, I would say, more qualitative with how, as opposed to quantitative with sort of the approaches we take, and more short-term versus long-term. And so we talk a lot more in this process about behaviors and what are the things that we think people can do that will help make the difference, either with the teams that they work with or the clients that they support. And I would say, what we've had is this sort of great sigh of relief, and then this sort of says, okay, they're going to be fair, and then actually an engagement that comes out of that, which with people go, okay, I can do this. I understand now what, I feel like I've got a sense of control back. So that's what I would say is really important, is giving people trying to give people a sense of control of the things they can do, and what success can look like. And then the other thing that I'd say is, we have really tried to focus on the idea of, we have to trust our people and hold them capable that they are going to do the work that we need them to do. And in some cases, when and how they do that work has really changed. I mean, we have lots of employees who are homeschooling their kids. And in some cases, I mean, I've got an 11-year-old, she might show up at some point in the background. It's easy to homeschool, but some of our folks have like 5 and 6-year-olds at home. And so what we've realized is we've again had to work very individually with them to say, okay, our contract in a way, or, of how we're going to work and how you're going to accomplish your work is maybe get a change. And so they're maybe doing that work at off hours or on the weekends or those types of things. And we've tried to be really flexible and creative around how they can accomplish that work and when they can accomplish that work. So again, they can continue to contribute.
Great. Stephen, I think the next one is I'm going to direct to you. With more clients interacting digitally, do you anticipate branch closures or staff layoffs?
No, I mean, for us, like, we're in growth mode. So, I mean, I'm not speaking for the industry. I'm speaking for Canadian Western Bank. I mean, we've only got right now just over 40 physical kind of, banking centers.
Right.
So we're adding. So we've got a multi-year plan with most of our growth because, our historical footprint was in Western Canada. Our growth of physical presence is concentrate. We've got things that I'd like to do in Western Canada in some markets where I'd like to expand even there. But, our main focus is on Ontario right now and getting to critical mass, particularly in the GTA. And so our first kind of move will be, in the fall with Mississauga.
Okay.
So, we're in growth mode. And, frankly, if the others are rationalizing, that's okay, because for us, I don't wish ill upon the world. I don't, you don't wish for a pandemic or a global economic recession, but we see that we have an opportunity to step into this. If there's a gap, this is our opportunity where we can really have a moment of truth and really create momentum and take market share. And it lines up with, we're, as much as anything, I think about a growth company as much as a financial institution. And so we're in growth mode for sure. And so that's where it wasn't as difficult for us to talk about the no layoffs because of just where we are in our journey. I think that the part that, was amplified for us is with our home base being in Alberta. Alberta's in a tough situation. And so I think people with when you look at oil, just while the bank doesn't, have a lot of involvement in drilling that part of the sector, the end of the day is it's a heavily energy dependent economy. And so our people were kind of freaking out that way, but we still have tremendous market share opportunities just in Alberta. And there's lots of great companies, it hasn't been a great economy in Alberta for several years actually. And our clients have diversified. One of our clients, I remember he was 90% domestic business, and now he's 95% international business.
Yeah.
And so they've already adjusted and adapted. So we've got tremendous opportunity there. So we have so much room to grow that it was an easy thing for us. So I would say, it's not the same for every business in terms of how they think about, and for every bank. For us, we just have so much space to fill, so much white space that, there's only up for us.
That's great. Thanks, Stephen. Kelly, I think this one is for you. How will you deal in the return to work period with employees wanting to return to the office environment where others would rather or maybe still have to remain at home because of child care issues?
Yeah, great question. So we're right now in the midst of doing a non-anonymous survey with our entire workforce. So we're asking people to declare their name when they complete it. And we're actually asking them their preference. We're asking them their interest in returning. What are the conditions that need to exist for them to feel safe doing that? What are their challenges if, for example, if they're working from home, what are the challenges in their home environment? We got 85% of our people set up and work for home in a period of days. I would say not everyone is set up super well to do that over a sustained period of time. So what we're now doing is sort of relooking at, if we're going to be at this for another 3, 6, 9 months with some portion of our workforce, what does that look like? The other thing is that, not every workplace is the same. And so, for example, we have 3 different really types of workplaces. We've got the branch environment where it's a smaller team. There's still physical distancing measures. Really the biggest thing there that we have to think about is the client interaction. We've then got kind of standalone business centers. And then we've got corporate office towers. The corporate office towers are the ones that are the hardest to figure out. And so we basically have teams looking at each one of those. But as much as we can, we're actually going to give people choice. Because we've got some folks that are really anxious to get back into the workplace, either because they need to from a mental health standpoint, or their home setups not great. And then we've got others that maybe really need to be at home for longer. And so we're going to give people choice. And we're kind of working through that again on a very individual plan basis with kind of all 2,500 of our people.
And I'm going to intervene with my own question here before we get to the next one, and I apologize. But on the note of people working remotely, do you see that there will be some employees, either because of their needs and desires or because of your business needs, that will remain working remotely on a long-term basis, or permanently?
Without a doubt, flexible work arrangements are here to stay. We had implemented them over the course of the past year as a part of our employer of choice strategy. I would say there was, some level of reluctance with some of our leaders around, can this really work? Will my person be as productive? And I think this has just, proven to us that we can make it work, and it's not to be feared. It is to be embraced. Well, not for everybody. And so without a doubt, I think we will see, I don't know what percentage, we'll know better when we get our survey back. That's one of our questions actually, is who would want to continue to do it on a permanent basis. And I think that will then inform how you think about your physical footprint, your continued sort of workplace strategies. And, it'll change a lot of that, I think, for good. It's a little bit what Stephen was talking about earlier. I think some of these things will not go back to the way they were.
Yeah, I think any myth that anybody had about working remotely has been blown out of the water through this crisis. Doug, I'm going to direct this question to you. Now, have you mentioned that you started embarking upon the use of drone technology and other technologies. What's been one of the most significant challenges of going digital, and how has your company overcome it? And then I'd like to ask either Kelly or Stephen that question as well from CWB perspective.
Well, because we don't have set hours, or we have people that work all over remotely to begin with, and a lot of our company has got huge data sharing involved with it. So our tech savvy or remote locations hasn't really changed. It's just because we already operated that way, we are kind of at an advantage to ones that were making that transition into that remote workplace. So really hasn't changed too much. It's actually helped us because we were already set up to do so.
Great. Stephen, do you want to jump in or?
Yeah, I mean, the two things that I think of, Kelly might have other things, but for me, we had to react quite quickly and adaptively to ramp up having all 85% of our employees being able to access our systems remotely. And so that you just don't flick a switch. There's a whole bunch of work to enable that. And I'd say one of the challenges that emerged was just the range of people's kind of home environment. For those who are already working from home, they generally worked like fine. I had no problem. But for many people, maybe they didn't have the greatest computer or the greatest Wi-Fi or the greatest ergonomics, or they didn't have a quiet workspace and they're in the kitchen and the kids were running through as they're trying to work. And so it's a bit of that. That's part of the thing is, as we figure out where we're charting, how do we deal with making sure people are enabled and equipped in those environments? Because I'd say we had a range of, talking about that productivity piece of where people were at to be the most productive for them. I'd say, that was one of the challenges. The other one was more just on the banking transactional side, is we were already on the journey to try and make things more virtual, less, just modernize. And so I'd say this is we're already on that, but this is accelerated where we said, okay, we were doing this thing and it was going to be a 6-month project. We need it to be a 6-day project right now. Yeah. In terms of moving to digital signatures and, removing paperwork and things like that. So it can all be done without actually people physically coming together. And so what that's done is, I don't know that it's changed it so much as accelerated it, but that was a barrier that we had to figure some things out really quickly to make sure we could execute in this environment.
Thanks. Now we're closing in on the top of the hour, so I have a couple of more questions. So we'll go through them really as fast as we possibly can. Kelly, I'm going to lob this one at you. Are you surveying your clients to understand their needs and resilience, and what are you asking them, and what are you looking for? Kelly, are you there?
Sorry about
mute,
that.
Kelly.
Stephen, do you want to handle that one? It's kind of client based.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, we survey our clients. We actually did, so we generally go out to our clients twice a year. And so, we ask a bunch of questions to get some more subjective feedback around their needs and what would make a difference for them. And then we also create, a traditional kind of net promoter score. And the last one we did actually bridged right before COVID and right after COVID. So it's kind of a bit tricky to interpret the results. But, what was interesting to us is that our scores went up. So we're thinking, well, we must be doing something right. I don't have the slices of it to interpret whether that was kind of a lift of our COVID response or not. But as we go in, when we're doing our next tranche of surveying later this year, we're adding some questions along some of the questions that you've asked during this call around what do they need from us? What would make more of a difference? To make sure that we can adapt our strategy and even some of our priorities of, on the product side or the process side of things that we're building that, do we need to adapt and change course towards what they really need from us? And so we use that kind of surveying to inform that. But, we actually have some pretty recent information, and it tells us that, I think we're on the right track of our priorities. So, but it's an important tool for us.
Great. And I'm sure we'll all be learning from client or member outreach once we're through this. I'm going to turn this to Stephen. Do you think there's a new economy that will emerge, and do you anticipate wide-scale business closures? And can business survive if there's a second wave of COVID-19 and a lockdown that comes with it?
Yeah, so I guess my first point would be, don't underestimate the resilience of the economy and business owners in the long run. There's been downturns before, and I'd say don't bet against entrepreneurs. Will it change? So whether there'll be a second wave or not, I don't know, but I know that we will continue to adapt as an economy, and we will get through that, and there will be growth ultimately. But it will be different, I think. I don't know. It's too early for me to say what will be different, but as I said before, I think there'll be lasting differences in terms of how people interact and those kinds of things. Like, an example would be, as I look at the restaurant industry and just say, I just think there's going to be some permanent kind of shifts in the restaurant industry, much more proportional shift to delivery and takeout, I think, from sit-in. But I don't think the sit-in restaurant is dead. I just think there's differences, and some that have adapted really quickly. I know that there's some of our larger restaurant kind of chain clients, they're doing more revenues than they ever did before, when they were constrained by capacity to just physical locations and didn't offer delivery or takeout. They've swapped over and they're making more money. And I'm like, well, they've got some choices, and they might be investing in capacity and maybe some central kitchen capacity to, do both. And they might be twice as much revenue as they were before. And so, with everything, the way I look at our business is every disruption creates an opportunity, and it's all about how you jump on that and move with it. And I'd say, it's going to be different, but there's opportunity there too.
Fantastic, thanks. And one last question before we go, and this is for Kelly. You mentioned at the beginning the importance of the decision-making process and systems. Can you elaborate on this further? And I know that's a big question for less than a minute.
You're on mute, Kelly.
You need to, thanks, Stephen. You need to create speed as your advantage, right? And so for us, it was about having really clear role clarity on who makes important decisions. And so again, we had sort of a working group team that basically would go out, they would research, they would figure out alternatives, they would come back with a recommendation. And then in some cases, depending on the decision, we'd say just run with it. Or then we had this executive group, and we literally, every morning we met as a response team, and at the end of the day, we met as an executive team. So we were turning, in the crisis at least, I think we're now in what we call a period of stabilization, but in the crisis, we were turning decisions in under 24 hours. And they were decisions that normally might take us weeks to make, right? Where we would debate back and forth and collaborate and go get other stakeholder opinions. And so there's, I think, a lesson to be learned there around agility and, how do you really quickly understand that you can get 80% of the information you need and make a decision quickly. And sometimes that's better to operate fast and be decisive than it is to try and get the 100% answer or the 100% solution that takes you 2 or 3 more weeks. And you've got sort of employees just sitting there wondering what's going on. And so, I think that's one of the things that we're now trying to figure out, well, how do we actually leverage that in a more sustained way within the business?
I think we've all learned through this not to let the good be the enemy, no, the perfect be the enemy of the good. So, so with that, I think we're going to close. We are past the top of the hour. Kelly, Stephen, and Doug, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you, everybody who took the time to participate in this session, ask questions. You'll see a slide up there with some contact information for CWB. This session has been recorded and it will be posted on the Canadian Resilience Business Network website in a couple of days, and everyone that's participated this afternoon will get an email with the link to that to the recording. And with that, I'll wish everyone a good afternoon. Thank you so much again, Kelly and Doug and Stephen, and everybody stay well. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Susanna.